在今天，我们非常荣幸的邀请到了国际特赦组织的秘书长萨里尔赛迪来到现场，来参与我们的讨论，同时要来进一步探讨有关于台湾现在非常重视的人权的问题。Mr. Shetty, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Taiwan, and I would love to ask. The first question is, what's your first image of Taiwan? And I know this is your first time to Taiwan, right?
It is, yeah. I'm very happy to be here. In fact, I landed yesterday in Kaohsiung, your second...
Yeah, Kaohsiung.
Kaohsiung, your second city. And then today, this morning, we traveled in the train from Kaohsiung to Taipei, and it was very beautiful, the mountains and the landscape. But what I liked even more about Taiwan is that yesterday evening we met with the mayor of the city as well, and she had also brought a whole group of ex-political prisoners, and there's a lot of passion and dynamism in the conversation. We have a big celebration for Amnesty International in Taiwan, and so I'm here, and of course Asia is very challenging when it comes to human rights.
And I know my body, my rights. 就是我的身体我自己做主。This is your new campaign issue for now on. So, would you please talk us more about this?
One of the, there's two big global campaigns that Amnesty is focusing on right now. One is on My Body, My Rights, and the other is on Stop Torture.
Yes.
And I'll come to that later. Now, what is happening is that millions of young people in the world today, particularly women, their lives and bodies are being at threat, at risk, because governments are not protecting their sexual and reproductive rights. So let me explain what that means. So the very simple things. For example, we have more than 150 million girls are sexually assaulted every year. It's a staggering number, 150 million.
All over the world?
All over the world.
Yes.
And then you have the problem of girls being forced into marriage at a very early age. So something like 140 million girls in the next 5 to 6 years will be married off when they're still children.
I see.
And about 14 million girls give birth to children when they're below age. So this is unwanted pregnancies. More than 200 million women do not have access to contraceptives. So when we say My Body, My Rights, it's about how do you protect the rights of individuals to make their own choice. So in the case of Taiwan, I want to just mention this because we've seen several cases surfacing from time to time in Taiwan as well of torture and ill treatment.
Yes.
So, for example, if you take the issue of prison conditions in Taiwan, now the government itself admits that the prisons in Taiwan are overcrowded. There's 20% more people in the prisons than the capacity which exists. Also, the health services that they provide for those in prison is not as per standard, because if you go by the UN Convention, it says that even if you're in prison, you should be having the same standard of health provision which you get if you are not in prison. Now, unfortunately, that is not happening either. I'm sure you know of this famous case of Corporal Hung Chang-ja.
Hong Zhong-chiu, yes. Hong Zhong-chiu.
I didn't want to
We're really concerned about that. Yes.
So, I mean, his case was one where, he died in prison simply because of ill treatment. And then, of course, there are two other very long-standing cases of people in prison for a very long time that in order to get a confession from them, they were tortured. So,
as your point of view, what do you think about the human rights in Taiwan, especially before the government Ma Ying-jeou, our president Ma Ying-jeou, before and after?
Peaceful protest, as we saw in March of this year here, we have done some analysis of that, and our view is that there have been several cases where the police have used excessive force. And this is not in line with international human rights standards. In fact, in April again, with the anti-nuclear demonstration, once again we saw the same pattern. So the use of force, and including some of the equipment, like the water cannons were used on people who were peacefully protesting. And at the same time, the police and the riot police, they need to be trained on how to deal with crowds.
What do you mean trained?
Trained. They need to, because there is...
What kind of train?
So there is a UN guidelines on how you should behave when you're dealing with crowds, because it's a tricky situation, when you're dealing with crowds, because the police are ordered to control the crowd, and so now at that time, if you're not properly trained on how to behave, because what is said always is that it's the responsibility of the government, for example, to ensure public order. Everybody understands that. But how do you go about creating public order is a big question. So you cannot use disproportionate force. It has to be necessary and proportionate. That's what the guidelines say. And you have to be trained. But also the second thing is you have to change the legislation. You have to train the police. But also whenever there is complaints of ill treatment, of excessive force, the government has to investigate that.
You got a lot of details about the sunflower movement. So what do you think about this movement?
See, I think this is a phenomenon which is happening all over the world. And this phenomenon is that young people have lost trust and confidence in the leaders.
Okay.
So, and this is happening everywhere because there is a real deficit of accountability. I think from my understanding of the sunflower movement, it was a lot of people calling for accountability. And I think that's a good thing.
我们非常谢谢，那么秘书能够进一步的到我们的现场来，提供给我们这么多精彩的意见。我们稍后回来。